The departure gate slammed shut with a metallic thud. I hit the glass, so hard my palm burned. "Please," I shouted. "Open it. My boarding pass, my passport, everything is valid." The airline employee didn't even look up from her screen. "Boarding is complete, sir." "No, you don't understand." "I do." She finally raised her eyes. And the answer is still no. Behind the glass, the aircraft slowly rolled away from the terminal. Flight AX-271. The only flight that could have carried me to Zurich. The only flight connected to the Hartmann Institute's Global Research Fellowship. The opportunity one had spent 8 years chasing. The opportunity that would never exist again. My phone vibrated. Lena. 23 missed calls. Then another. I answered before the first ring ended. Lena. Her breathing was shaky. "Ethan, where are you?" "I missed the flight." Silence. Then, "You actually stayed." Something inside me froze. "Stayed? I told you I needed you today," she whispered. "I thought." Her voice softened with relief instead of guilt. "I really thought you'd leave." The line disconnected before I could ask what she meant. I stared at the black screen. The airport lights reflected across it like cracks spreading through glass. Something wasn't right. The rain outside was relentless. By the time I reached the hospital, my clothes clung to my skin. Lena sat outside the emergency operating room. Mascara stained her cheeks. The moment she saw me, she rushed over and threw her arms around me. "You came." Her voice trembled. "I knew you wouldn't abandon me." I gently pulled away. "What happened?" She lowered her eyes. "Ryan." My chest tightened. Her older brother. He was driving back from the mountain road. She swallowed. The brakes failed. The operating room doors remained shut. A doctor walked past without looking at us. Lena buried her face in her hands. "If you had left for Switzerland," she whispered, "I'd have been completely alone." I looked at her. For years, every important decision in my life had quietly bent around hers. Extra shifts because she wanted to open a cafe. Cancel conferences because she was anxious. Missed networking dinners because her family needed help moving. None of it felt forced. Love rarely does. But standing there, soaked from the rain, watching the flight disappear from my future, a question I had never allowed myself surfaced. Would she have done the same for me? The surgery lasted 6 hours. Ryan survived. Barely. His spine had been damaged. Recovery would take years. Lena cried against my shoulder. "I owe you everything." I smiled weakly. "You don't owe me anything." She held my hand tighter. "I'll never forget today." I believed her. That was my first mistake. 3 months later, the Hartmann Institute officially announced the fellowship recipients. My name was nowhere on the list. Professor Aldridge called personally. "I'm sorry, Ethan." "I understand." "No." He sighed. "You don't." The committee waited nearly a week. My fingers tightened around the phone. They wanted you. They selected someone else only because you never arrived. I closed my eyes. I know. There won't be another opening. I know. When the call ended, I sat alone inside the laboratory. Rows of unfinished experiments surrounded me. Every machine hummed exactly as before. Only my future had changed. That evening I carried flowers to Lena's apartment. The lights were already on. Laughter drifted through the open balcony. I smiled despite myself. Maybe today we'd finally celebrate Ryan's recovery. Maybe we'd begin planning our wedding again. The apartment door wasn't locked. I stepped inside. He actually skipped Switzerland. A man's laughter. "Ryan." Another voice joined him. "You underestimated him." Lena laughed softly. I didn't. I stopped breathing. She continued. "Ethan has always chosen me." Ryan chuckled. "You manipulated him perfectly." "It wasn't manipulation." She sounded almost amused. "I simply told him I needed him." Someone poured wine. Glasses clinked. Ryan spoke again. "And the fellowship? Gone forever." A brief silence. Then Lena answered quietly. "That's probably for the best." My fingers loosened. The flowers slipped onto the floor. She continued speaking. "If Ethan had gone overseas, he would have realized he never needed me." Everything inside me went completely still. No one heard the bouquet hit the hardwood floor. The music from the living room swallowed the sound. I stood in the hallway, hidden behind the wall, while petals scattered across polished oak. Ryan noticed him first. His smile disappeared. Ethan, Lena turned. For a heartbeat, her face emptied of every expression. Then panic rushed in. Ethan, you're home already? I looked at her. The woman I had loved for 7 years. The woman whose tears had convinced me to abandon the greatest opportunity of my life. She stepped toward me. You weren't supposed to. She stopped herself. I thought you'd be working late. I bent down and picked up the crushed bouquet. Several stems had snapped. Water dripped onto my shoes. They're beautiful, she said softly. You remembered. I met her eyes. Did I interrupt something? Ryan stood up. His posture stiffened, but he quickly forced a smile. We were just talking. I heard. Silence spread across the room. Lena reached for my hand. I let mine remain at my side. What exactly did you hear? Her voice was careful now, measured. I answered just as calmly. I heard that you believed missing Zurich was for the best. Her fingers froze in midair. Ethan, I also heard that you thought I would realize I never needed you. Ryan immediately stepped between us. You misunderstood. Did I? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Lena took a slow breath. Can we talk privately? I nodded. She led me onto the balcony. Rainwater still dripped from the railing. The city lights blurred beyond the mist. She folded her arms tightly. I know how this sounds. Then explain it. I was scared. Of what? You leaving. I was going to study abroad. You were going to build a life that didn't include me. The honesty in her answer stunned me more than any lie could have. So you asked me to stay. I needed you. No. I shook my head. You needed certainty. She looked away. I love you. Loved. The single word hung between us. Her lips trembled. I still do. I laughed quietly. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It wasn't angry. It simply sounded tired. If you loved me. I held up the crushed flowers. Why were you celebrating the death of my dream? Tears filled her eyes. I wasn't celebrating. You poured wine. We were relieved. Relieved. She closed her eyes. You don't understand. Help me understand. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered something so softly, I almost missed it. I thought you'd leave me behind. There it was. Not love. Fear. Possession. Dependence. Whatever name it deserved. It wasn't something I could build a future on. I leaned against the balcony railing. The rain had finally stopped. Far below, traffic flowed through the streets without hesitation. Life moved forward. People missed trains, lost jobs, buried dreams. Yet the city never paused. Maybe I shouldn't either. Ethan, she stepped closer. We can still have a good life. I smiled faintly. I don't doubt that. Hope returned to her face. Then I continued. But I don't think it'll be together. Her expression shattered. No. She grabbed my sleeve. You can't decide this over one conversation. This wasn't one conversation. I gently removed her hand. It was 7 years. Ryan opened the balcony door. Everything okay? I looked at him. For years, I had admired his confidence, trusted his advice, helped pay his medical bills after the accident. Now I noticed something I had ignored before. He never once looked guilty, only concerned about losing control of the situation. Ethan, he said carefully, don't make emotional decisions. I almost smiled. That's exactly what I stopped doing. I walked past both of them. Neither tried to block the door. Inside the apartment, my overnight bag still rested beside the sofa. I hadn't unpacked after returning from the airport. Almost absent-mindedly, I picked it up. Lena followed me into the hallway. Where are you going? I don't know. When are you coming back? I looked around the apartment. Our framed photographs. Our shared books. The dining table we assembled together. Every corner carried a memory. But memories weren't foundations. They announced another international conference today, I said quietly. She frowned. What does that have to do with anything? I almost deleted the email without reading it. Her breathing stopped. Then I smiled. Not at her, but at the realization forming inside me. Maybe missing one flight doesn't have to define the rest of my life. Behind me, my phone vibrated. Unknown international number. I hesitated, then answered. A calm female voice spoke flawless English. May I speak with Dr. Ethan Carter? This is Ethan. My name is Sophia Weiss from the Hartmann Institute. My heartbeat quickened. We've discovered something concerning your fellowship application. Lena's face turned pale before another word was spoken. Mr. Carter? Sophia Weiss's voice remained calm despite the static crackling through the international call. Are you somewhere you can speak privately? I glanced at Lena. Her fingers were digging into the edge of the hallway cabinet, her knuckles white. I'm listening. There's been an internal review regarding this year's fellowship. My heartbeat slowed instead of quickening. People rarely called with good news after saying internal review. The selection committee recently discovered that several documents related to your travel arrangements were altered. My grip tightened around my phone. Altered? Yes. I don't understand. Neither did we. Sophia paused. Our records show that your arrival was expected a full day after the actual interview. I frowned. That's impossible. The itinerary submitted to us was changed from your original confirmation. I never changed it. We know. The hallway suddenly felt much smaller. Someone had changed the schedule. Someone had made me believe the interview was later than it truly was. Sophia continued. We're still investigating. I called because your professor insisted you deserve to know. A dull ache spread through my chest. Does it change anything? No, she answered honestly. The fellowship has already begun. I closed my eyes. So it's over. For this opportunity, yes. Silence. But not necessarily for your future. I waited. The Institute is opening a collaborative research program next spring. It won't be identical. No, but your work is still highly respected. She lowered her voice. And if the investigation confirms what we suspect, you will receive an official recommendation from us. My throat tightened. Thank you. We should have caught it sooner. When the call ended, I remained standing in the hallway. Lena stared at me. What happened? I slipped the phone into my pocket. Nothing that concerns you anymore. She flinched. I left with one suitcase. No shouting. No dramatic accusations. No slammed doors. The elevator descended floor by floor. For 7 years, I had imagined marriage, children, growing old together. Instead, I watched glowing numbers count down. 22, 21, 20. By the time the doors opened onto the lobby, I realized I hadn't cried. Not because I wasn't hurting, because something inside me had quietly stopped holding on. 3 days later, I moved into a furnished apartment across the city. It was smaller, quieter. There were no framed photographs, no matching coffee mugs, no plans taped to the refrigerator. Only a desk, a bed, and enough silence to hear myself think. My phone buzzed constantly. Lena, Ryan, mutual friends. Ignored. Then Professor Aldridge called. I heard. So, did everyone else? I only know what matters. He pushed his glasses up, even though I couldn't see him. Will you return to the lab? I don't know. Ethan. His tone hardened. You've spent years solving impossible research problems. Yes. So don't tell me one broken engagement has defeated you. Despite myself, I smiled. I'll be there Monday. Good. He hung up immediately. That was his version of encouragement. Monday morning felt strangely ordinary. The lab smelled of disinfectant and machine oil. Graduate students rushed between workstations. Microscopes hummed. Computers beeped. Nothing had changed, except everyone knew. Conversation stopped as I walked past. Someone whispered, "That's him." I heard she left him. No, I heard he left her. Rumors always moved faster than facts. Professor Aldridge appeared from his office. Conference room. No greeting. No sympathy. Just work. Exactly what I needed. Inside sat 5 researchers. A new pharmaceutical company wanted proposals for a joint project. Funding. Equipment. International publication. Normally, I would have declined. Lena had always hated overtime. You already spent enough nights in that lab. I could still hear her voice. This time, I'll lead the project. Every head turned toward me. Professor Aldridge simply nodded. I thought you might. That afternoon, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Ethan. Ryan. I almost declined. Almost. What is it? Lena hasn't eaten. I remained silent. She hasn't slept either. And she's falling apart. He sounded genuinely worried. You need to talk to her. No. You owe her that much. I actually laughed. Oh, Ethan, you know what I owe? My voice stayed calm. My landlord. My students. My research team. My parents. I don't owe your sister another chance to explain why my future frightened her. Ryan exhaled sharply. You've changed. No. I finally stopped apologizing for wanting my own life. I ended the call, then blocked his number. For the first time, the silence afterward felt peaceful. A week later, Professor Aldridge handed me a sealed envelope. No return address. Inside was a printed photograph. An airport surveillance still. The timestamp froze my breathing. The morning of my flight. A woman stood at the airline service counter. Dark coat. Long hair. Even from behind. I recognized Lena instantly. The photograph slipped from my fingers and landed on the conference table. No one spoke. Professor Aldridge folded his hands. It arrived anonymously. Who sent it? No idea. What does it prove? Nothing. He looked directly at me. Yet, I picked it up again. The timestamp read 6:42 a.m. My flight boarded at 8:05. Lena had told me she spent that entire morning rushing to the hospital after Ryan's accident. The photograph said otherwise. Have you shown anyone else? No. Good. He leaned back. I've watched talented people destroy themselves, chasing answers they couldn't survive. I'm not planning revenge. I know. Then why are you warning me? Because truth has a price too. That evening I drove to the airport. Not to confront anyone. Not yet. I simply wanted to see the place where my future had quietly changed direction. The terminal looked exactly as I remembered. Families hugged. Business travelers hurried through security. Children pressed their faces against enormous windows. Life kept departing. Life kept arriving. I walked to the customer service desk. A young employee smiled politely. Can I help you? I'm hoping to request archived records. She frowned. Those usually require legal authorization. I understand. I handed her my identification anyway. She typed for a moment. I'm sorry. Company policy. As I turned to leave, an older supervisor stepped out of a nearby office. He looked at me twice. Ethan Carter? Yes. I remember you. You do. You were the researcher who almost missed the Zurich flight. Almost. The word lingered. I didn't almost miss it. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. There was confusion that morning. What kind of confusion? He glanced around before speaking. A woman insisted your booking had changed. Every muscle in my body tightened. I never authorized any changes. I know that now. He rubbed his forehead. She seemed convincing. What exactly did she say? She claimed you had called her because your phone battery had died. He frowned as if reconstructing an old memory. She asked whether your boarding documents could be reissued with the updated itinerary. I never asked anyone to do that. I realized that. His expression darkened. Unfortunately, by the time our staff realized the discrepancy, several automated notices had already been updated. The world became strangely quiet. So the incorrect itinerary originated at this counter. I looked through the terminal windows. An aircraft lifted into the evening sky. Steady. Unstoppable. Just like the one I'd failed aboard. Can you identify the woman? The supervisor hesitated. I shouldn't. I'm not asking for confidential information. He studied me for a long moment. Then sighed. I recognized her because she cried. Cried. She said she was terrified of losing the man she loved. My chest ached. Not from anger. From disappointment. How many decisions have been disguised as love? I returned to the laboratory after sunset. The building was nearly empty. Only one office remained lit. Mine. As I unlocked the door, someone stood inside. A woman around 30. Professional suit. Confident posture. She turned before I spoke. Dr. Ethan Carter? Yes. She offered her hand. I'm Sophia Weiss. The phone call. I happened to be in the country. She smiled politely. So I decided to deliver something personally. She placed a thin folder on my desk. What is this? The preliminary findings from our investigation. I opened it. Emails. Flight confirmations. Internal reports. Near the bottom sat a single sentence highlighted in yellow. Original passenger itinerary modified, following an unauthorized third-party request. Below it, a handwritten note. Witness willing to testify, if necessary. I looked up. This changes everything. Sophia shook her head. No, it changes nothing about the fellowship. She tapped the folder gently. but it changes what you believed about yourself. I frowned. You spent months thinking you failed. I did fail. No. Her eyes met mine. You were prevented. There was a difference. A painful one. Before leaving, she paused at the doorway. One more thing. Yes. The Institute has heard about your new pharmaceutical project. I waited. If your results meet expectations. She smiled. We may be competing to recruit you. The office fell silent after she left. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the windows. Inside, I stared at the folder. For the first time since missing that flight, I wasn't looking backward. I was looking at what came next. The anonymous witness contacted me 3 days later. Not by phone, not by email. A plain white envelope waited on my desk when I arrived at the laboratory before sunrise. Inside was a business card. Marion Holt, Senior Operations Manager, Apex International Airport. On the back, someone had written a single sentence in blue ink. You deserve the complete truth. 7 p.m., Cafe Lumen. Come alone. I turned the card over several times. No signature, no explanation, only certainty. Cafe Lumen occupied the corner of a quiet street near the river. The evening crowd was thin. Rain drummed softly against the windows. Marion Holt looked older than I expected. Silver streaks ran through her dark hair, and fatigue lingered around her eyes. When I approached, she stood. Dr. Carter, Ms. Holt, I've wanted to apologize for months. You've never met me. I didn't have to. She gestured toward the empty chair. Please. Neither of us touched the coffee after it arrived. Instead, she opened a leather folder. I supervised the morning shift on the day of your departure. She slid several printed records across the table. Security logs, customer service notes, system access records. I reviewed these dozens of times after your institute contacted us. I studied the timestamps. Every modification to my itinerary had occurred within 9 minutes. Each one originated from the same service counter. I still don't understand how someone outside the airline could change my information. They couldn't. Marion looked ashamed. Not directly. She pointed toward another page. One of our new employees believed the woman speaking to her was your authorized representative. My representative? She presented copies of your passport. I stared at her. My passport never left my apartment. Marion hesitated. Did anyone close to you have access to it? A memory surfaced. 6 months before the fellowship, Lena had insisted on organizing our travel documents in labeled folders. You lose paperwork too easily, she teased. I had laughed. I'd even thanked her. Now that memory tasted bitter. Marianne continued. She also knew your reservation number. I closed the folder. Only 2 people knew that. She nodded. I assumed as much. Silence settled between us. Finally, I asked the question neither of us wanted to answer. Did she know exactly what she was doing? Marianne's expression grew heavy. I can't judge intentions. But she repeatedly asked whether delaying your arrival would affect your interview. The air left my lungs. Not canceling, not helping, delaying. Enough to make me miss the interview without realizing why. A careful plan, not an accident. I struggled with whether to contact you, Marianne admitted. Our legal department advised against it. So why now? She looked out the rain-covered window. My son lost a scholarship 10 years ago. Her voice cracked slightly. He blamed himself. She smiled sadly. Years later, we discovered his teacher had submitted the recommendation late. She met my eyes. Guilt built on lies destroys people. I couldn't argue with that, because I'd lived it. When I stepped outside, my phone vibrated. A text. Unknown number. Ryan collapsed at work. Lena keeps asking for you. Please come. I stared at the screen. Months ago, I would have been halfway to the hospital before finishing the message. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Marion noticed. Aren't you going? No. She didn't ask why. She simply nodded once. Sometimes strangers understood boundaries better than family. The following morning, the Pharmaceutical Consortium announced the shortlist for project funding. Our laboratory ranked first. The celebration lasted exactly 12 minutes. Then another email arrived. Emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance. Professor Aldridge looked unusually tense. This isn't about the project. What is it? You'll see. The boardroom overlooked the entire research campus. Executives, department heads, legal advisors. Everyone seemed unusually serious. A man in an expensive Navy suit stood when I entered. Dr. Ethan Carter. He extended his hand. Daniel Mercer. I recognized the name immediately. CEO of Mercer Biotechnologies, one of the largest research companies in the country. I've heard impressive things about your work. Thank you. I've also heard about Zurich. I didn't react. He smiled faintly. Good. I dislike hiring people who live in yesterday. Professor Aldridge folded his arms. Mr. Mercer has a proposal. Daniel slid a folder across the polished table. Our company is establishing an independent research division. I opened the first page. The salary alone exceeded my current income by nearly 3 times. Then came the laboratory budget, equipment, international partnerships, academic freedom. I looked up. You've done your homework. We always do. He smiled. And unlike certain institutions, his meaning was obvious. We don't judge researchers by one missed flight. I didn't sign immediately. That surprised Daniel Mercer. It surprised Professor Aldridge even more. Most researchers would have accepted without reading past the first page. Instead, I closed the folder. I need time. Daniel studied me. For the contract? For myself. A faint smile appeared. Good answer. He stood. We'll wait 1 week. As the executives left the boardroom, Professor Aldridge remained behind. You turned down the opportunity of a lifetime. I asked for time. Same difference. He removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. You know why I recommended you? Because of my research? No. He looked directly at me. Because you don't make decisions while emotional. I almost laughed. If only you'd known me a year ago. I did. His smile was small but genuine. I also knew you'd become this person eventually. That evening I returned to my apartment, carrying the contract. Someone was waiting outside my building. Lena. She looked thinner. Dark circles framed her eyes. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me. I've been trying to reach you. I know. You blocked every number. I did. She nodded as if she deserved that answer. I only need 10 minutes. I considered walking inside. Instead, I checked my watch. You have 5. She almost smiled. You've become strict. No. I've become careful. The words clearly hurt. She lowered her eyes. I know about the airport. My expression didn't change. She noticed. So, you've already found out. I know someone contacted you. She took a shaky breath. I wanted to explain before someone else did. Go ahead. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. Finally, she whispered. I thought I was protecting us. I waited. She continued. You kept talking about Switzerland. The fellowship. The people you'd meet. The life waiting there. I became terrified. So you changed my itinerary. Tears rolled down her face. I only wanted to delay you. I know. I thought. She laughed bitterly. I thought if you stayed through Ryan's surgery, you'd choose us. I did choose you. Her shoulders shook. I know. You never had to test it. Silence settled between us. Passing cars sprayed rainwater across the street. Somewhere nearby a dog barked. Ordinary sounds. An ordinary evening. Nothing about the conversation felt ordinary. You once asked me whether I loved you. She looked up. I did. I believe you. Hope flickered across her face. Then I continued. But love without trust becomes ownership. The hope disappeared. I never meant to ruin your future. You didn't. She frowned. I ruined my own future the moment I believed sacrificing myself was proof of love. She stared at me for a long time. I don't know how to fix this. I answered honestly. You can't. Not because I hated her. Because some choices couldn't be undone. No matter how sincere the apology. The next morning, national business news broke an unexpected story. Mercer Biotechnologies announces new international research division. My name wasn't mentioned. Not yet. But someone else noticed. Ryan called from an unfamiliar number. I answered by accident. So it's true. What is? You're leaving? I haven't decided. You owe Lena one more conversation. There it is again. What? That word. Oh. Ryan sighed. She made one mistake. I looked out my office window. One mistake. You almost lost a career. I lost 7 years of believing someone would protect my dreams the way I protected hers. He remained silent, then quietly admitted, I told her to do it. The room became perfectly still. I said, I told her you'd never forgive her if she asked you directly to stay. My fingers tightened around the phone, so we made the scheduled change seem harmless. We, not she, we. I thought once you missed the interview, you'd move on. He sounded exhausted. I never imagined. You'd lose everything. I closed my eyes. At last, another piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Not because I searched for revenge, because the truth kept walking toward me on its own. Ryan whispered, I'm ready to tell everyone what happened. I didn't answer immediately. Outside, the laboratory buzzed with life. Inside, years of unanswered questions were finally becoming complete. Ryan's confession remained on my phone long after the call ended. I hadn't recorded it. I hadn't needed to. His voice had carried something I had never heard before. Not confidence, not excuses, only exhaustion. For months, he had been protecting a lie that was finally too heavy to carry. I placed my phone face down on the desk. Across the laboratory, my research team celebrated another successful experiment. Glassware clinked. Someone laughed. The contrast felt surreal. My personal life was unraveling while my professional life had never been stronger. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Professor Aldridge entered without waiting. You look like you've reached an answer. I have. He sat across from me. Is it about Mercer? No. I slid the airport documents across the desk. And yes, he quietly read every page. When he finished, he removed his glasses. I was afraid it might be something like this. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know. He looked genuinely frustrated. I suspected your absence wasn't ordinary. But suspicion isn't evidence. I nodded. Neither of us believed in accusations without proof. That was the difference between science and gossip. What will you do now? He asked. I looked at the folder. Nothing. He raised an eyebrow. Nothing. The truth already exists. I closed the file. It doesn't need my anger to become real. 3 days later, Ryan asked to meet. Not at a restaurant, not at a cafe, at the rehabilitation center where he still attended weekly therapy. When I arrived, he sat alone in the courtyard. The wheelchair beside him was folded. He had learned to walk again, though slowly. He didn't smile when he saw me. I almost canceled. So did I. He gestured toward the empty bench. I deserve that. I remained standing. What do you want? He stared at the stone pathway for several seconds. I spent my entire life believing I was protecting my little sister. His voice was hoarse. Our parents died when she was 19. I became everything. Brother, guardian, problem solver. He laughed bitterly. I forgot she was an adult. I said nothing. When she panicked about Zurich, I convinced myself love justified interference. His shoulders slumped. It didn't. No, it didn't. He looked up. I've written a statement. He handed me a sealed envelope. It explains everything. I don't need it. You might not. His eyes filled with regret. But the people judging you do. I didn't take the envelope. Ryan quietly placed it on the bench between us. If you never use it, I'll understand. He stood carefully. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked smaller. Not physically, morally. As he slowly walked away, he never once looked back. That even my phone rang. Daniel Mercer, have you made your decision? Yes. And I'll accept. He laughed warmly. I suspected you would. I have one condition. I'm listening. My current research team comes with me. A brief silence. Then, I like that answer even more. News spread across the scientific community within hours. Lead researcher Ethan Carter joins Mercer Biotechnologies. Congratulatory emails flooded my inbox. Former classmates reached out. International collaborators contacted me. For the first time in years, no one introduced me as Lena's fiancé, only as Dr. Ethan Carter. It felt strangely liberating. 1 week later, the Hartman Institute released its official investigation report. It wasn't dramatic. No press conference. No sensational headlines. Just a carefully worded statement sent to every institution involved. Dr. Ethan Carter failed to attend the fellowship interview due to documented third-party interference affecting verified travel arrangements. The Institute recognizes that his absence resulted from circumstances beyond his control. Attached beneath the statement was something unexpected, a formal letter signed by every member of the original selection committee. We remain deeply impressed by Dr. Carter's academic record and unanimously recommend him for future international appointments. I read the letter twice, then quietly placed it inside my desk drawer. I didn't frame it. I didn't post it online. Some victories didn't need an audience. The audience arrived anyway. An investigative journalist somehow obtained portions of the airport findings. Within days, several newspapers published articles about academic sabotage, not naming me at first, but describing the events in remarkable detail. Then someone leaked Ryan's written statement. The names appeared. Lena Brooks, Ryan Brooks. The internet did what it always did. Judged, speculated, condemned. My phone exploded with messages. Did this really happen? Are you suing them? You have to expose everything. I answered none of them. Instead, I went to work. Late Friday afternoon, Sophia Weiss visited Mercer Biotechnologies. She carried no documents this time, only a small gift box. Congratulations on the new position. Thank you. She handed me the box. Inside lay a silver fountain pen. The committee bought it. I looked at her in surprise. They wanted to apologize properly. They don't owe me anything. Sophia smiled. They insisted you'd say that. I turned the pen over in my hand. The engraving caught the afternoon light. To futures still waiting. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked, "Have you heard from her?" "I've heard about her." Lena had resigned from her marketing firm after the article spread. Several clients withdrew their contracts. Friends who once admired her quietly disappeared. Not because I exposed her, because the truth eventually reached them. "What will she do?" Sophia asked. "I don't know. And if she comes back?" I capped the pen carefully. "Then I'll wish her well. Nothing more, nothing less." A month later, Mercer hosted its annual innovation conference. Researchers from more than 20 countries attended. I presented our team's latest findings before an auditorium filled with scientists, investors, and journalists. The applause lasted longer than I expected. As I stepped off the stage, Daniel Mercer caught up beside me. "You handled that well. I've had good teachers." He smiled. "There's someone asking to see you." I followed his gaze. Across the lobby, near the tall glass windows, stood Lena. She wore a simple gray coat. No makeup, no attempt to hide. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not broken, just tired. She didn't approach. She simply waited. I looked at Daniel. "It's your decision." He walked away without another word. I took a slow breath and started toward her. For the first time since we separated, there was nothing left to uncover. Only the final conversation that both of us had postponed for far too long. Lena waited until the last of the conference guests drifted toward the banquet hall. Neither of us spoke immediately. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the evening skyline, turning the city into thousands of scattered lights. For years, silence between us had always felt comfortable. Now it demanded honesty. "You look well," she said quietly. "I've been busy. I can tell." She glanced toward the auditorium where researchers were still discussing my presentation. I watched the entire lecture. I noticed. "You did. You've never been good at hiding in crowds." A faint, almost embarrassed smile crossed her face before disappearing. "I'm glad." I nodded toward a quieter seating area overlooking the courtyard. "We shouldn't block the entrance." She followed without argument. When we sat down, she placed a thin envelope on the table between us. "I didn't come to ask you to forgive me." I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "Then why are you here?" "I came to return something." She pushed it toward me. Inside were old photographs, concert tickets, receipts from tiny restaurants, a faded boarding pass from a weekend trip to the coast, even a silver key to the apartment we had once shared. She had kept everything. "I don't need these anymore," she whispered. "They belong to the life we planned." I slowly closed the envelope. "They're your memories, too." "They are." She looked out at the courtyard. "But memories shouldn't become chains." For the first time since we'd separated, I saw someone who wasn't trying to defend herself. She wasn't asking for another chance. She wasn't rewriting history. She was simply accepting it. I started therapy, she said. I looked at her. It took me months to admit I wasn't protecting love. Her voice remained steady. I was protecting my fear. She laughed softly at herself. I built an entire future around the idea that if I controlled enough things, people wouldn't leave. And instead, I became the reason they did. Neither of us tried to soften the truth. It no longer needed softening. I heard Ryan moved out. He wanted us both to learn how to live separately. She smiled sadly. We still have dinner every Sunday. That's good. He still blames himself. I thought of the envelope he'd left on the rehabilitation bench. He should stop. So should I. The words carried no self-pity, only acceptance. I've apologized so many times in my head. She looked at me. But apologies don't restore lost years. No, they don't. A gentle breeze moved through the open courtyard doors. For long, we simply watched people crossing the plaza below. Students, researchers, parents holding children's hands, everyone carrying invisible stories. I almost came to your apartment dozens of times, Lena admitted. I know. You knew. My neighbor kept telling me someone sat in the cafe across the street. She smiled faintly. I never had the courage to knock. That was probably wise. I think so too. She stood first. I should go. I rose as well. She hesitated. One last question. Go ahead. When you think about me now, what do you feel? It was the hardest question she'd asked all evening. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I did. I feel grateful. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. Grateful? You taught me something I should have learned much earlier. What? That loving someone shouldn't require abandoning myself. Tears gathered in her eyes, but they didn't fall. Instead, she smiled. A small, genuine smile. I hope someone loves you the way you deserved. I hope you learn to love someone without trying to keep them in a cage. She nodded once. I will. Then she turned and walked away. She never looked back. Neither did I. Some endings deserve that kind of respect. The following Monday, Mercer Biotechnologies officially launched the International Discovery Initiative. My research team occupied an entire floor of the new building. State-of-the-art laboratories stretched farther than I could see. Young researchers buzzed with excitement. Boxes still lined the hallways. Nothing was finished. Everything felt possible. 6 months passed faster than I expected. The International Discovery Initiative exceeded every projection. Our team published 2 major papers. A promising treatment for a rare neurological disorder entered advanced testing. The work consumed my days. It also gave them meaning. One afternoon, Daniel Mercer stepped into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. You've become impossible to schedule. I accepted the cup with a laugh. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. He sat across from me. Do you know what impresses me most? Our research. No. He shook his head. It's that your entire team trusts you. I frowned. They're talented people. They're also loyal. He leaned back. That isn't built through brilliance. It's built through character. The compliment landed more heavily than any award. Years earlier, I had measured success by acceptance letters and prestigious fellowships. Now I understood something different. The people willing to grow beside you mattered just as much as the destination. Near the end of autumn, Professor Aldridge announced his retirement. The auditorium was filled beyond capacity. Former students flew in from different countries. Researchers who had once argued fiercely with him now embraced him like family. When my turn came to speak, I stood behind the podium for several quiet seconds. I used to believe Professor Aldridge taught me science. Laughter spread through the audience. He did. I smiled. But that's not what stayed with me. I looked toward the front row where he sat with folded arms, pretending to dislike the attention. He taught me that evidence matters more than assumptions. He taught me that patience often outlasts talent. And when my own confidence disappeared, he never tried to rescue me. Instead, he waited for me to stand on my own. The old professor cleared his throat and looked away. It was the closest he'd ever come to showing emotion in public. When the applause ended, he approached me backstage. You've become a better speaker. I'm still working on it. He nodded toward the audience. They weren't applauding your speech. They were applauding your life. Winter arrived with the season's first snowfall. From my office window, The city looked almost unrecognizable beneath the white rooftops. A package arrived without a return address. Inside was a newly published photography book. The dedication on the first page was handwritten. To the person who taught me that letting go can also be an act of love. Lena. There was no phone number, no request to meet, no apology, only a quiet acknowledgement that both of us had continued walking. I placed the book on the shelf beside my research journals. Not hidden, not displayed, simply part of the story that had shaped me. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, the laboratory remained warm, alive with conversation and discovery. For the first time in many years, peace no longer felt temporary. It felt like home. Spring arrived with clear skies and a stack of unopened invitations. Universities wanted guest lectures. Research institutes requested collaborations. International conferences offered keynote stages. A year earlier, I would have accepted every opportunity out of fear that another door might close forever. Now I chose carefully. Not every open door deserved to be entered. One Monday morning, Daniel Mercer placed a thin folder on my desk. The board approved it. I opened the folder. At the top of the first page were 5 words. Director, Global Research Division. I looked up. You've got the wrong office. Daniel laughed. I've checked twice. I'm 35. So, there are people with twice my experience. There are. He leaned against the doorway, and several of them recommended you. I read through the proposal in silence. A larger team, international partnerships, the freedom to mentor young scientists, less time in the laboratory, more responsibility. Years ago, I would have focused only on prestige. Now I asked a different question. Will I still have time to do research? Daniel smiled. That was the correct first question. 3 weeks later, I delivered a lecture at a university where I had once studied as a nervous graduate student. The auditorium overflowed with students. Some sat on the stairs. Others stood along the walls. After the presentation, dozens waited to ask questions. Most wanted career advice. One young man remained until everyone else had left. He looked barely 20. I almost turned down a scholarship. Why? My parents want me to stay close to home. He stared at the floor. I feel guilty for wanting more. His words echoed a version of myself I barely recognized. I gestured toward 2 chairs near the empty stage. Sit. He obeyed. Do you love your parents? Of course. Do they love you? Yes. Then don't confuse love with permission to abandon your future. He looked up slowly. I don't understand. I spent years believing sacrifice proved devotion. I smiled gently. It doesn't. What does? Respect. He frowned. For yourself. Silence settled between us. Then he nodded. I think. I needed to hear that. So did I. He laughed. So who told you? Life. As I left the university, someone called my name. I turned. Ryan stood near the parking lot. He walked with a slight limp, but without assistance. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he approached. I wasn't sure you'd stop. I almost didn't. I know. His honesty made the conversation easier. He handed me a folded newspaper. The headline covered nearly half the page. Community Rehabilitation Center opens under Ryan Brooks Foundation. I looked back at him. You started a foundation? He rubbed the back of his neck. I sold my business shares and invested the money here for people recovering from spinal injuries. He smiled awkwardly. I figured I'd spent enough years taking. It was time to build something. I extended my hand. I'm glad. He shook it firmly. I'm not asking to be friends. I know. I just wanted you to see that. People can change. I believe they can. Because I had changed too. Not into someone harder. Into someone healthier. Ryan let out a slow breath. I'll leave you alone now. He turned to go. Ryan. He looked back. I hope the foundation succeeds. A genuine smile spread across his face. So do I. He walked away without another word. Some relationships weren't restored. They simply reached a place where resentment was no longer necessary. 2 years later, the Hartman Institute invited me back. Not as an applicant, as the keynote speaker for the opening ceremony of its newest international fellowship program. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same auditorium that had once represented my greatest loss now welcomed me as an honored guest. Sophia Weiss met me backstage. I've been waiting a long time for this day. So have I. She laughed. You know, the committee argued for almost an hour about who should introduce you. And who won? The oldest professor. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. He threatened to keep talking until everyone surrendered. I couldn't help laughing. The auditorium fell silent as I stepped onto the stage. Hundreds of young researchers looked toward me with the same mixture of hope and uncertainty I once carried. I placed my notes on the podium, then closed them. I didn't need them. When I was younger, I believed success depended on never missing the right opportunity. The audience listened without moving. I was wrong. A few curious expressions appeared. I did miss one. The biggest opportunity of my early career. I let the silence settle, and I spent months believing that single failure defined my future. I looked across the room. It didn't. What defined my future was what I chose to build afterward. No one interrupted. No one checked a phone. Even the translators paused between sentences as though they didn't want to break the moment. I hope every one of you achieves your dreams. I smiled. But if life closes one door, don't spend years staring at it. There are doors you cannot even see while you're facing the wrong direction. When the applause began, it continued long after I stepped away from the podium. That evening, I walked alone through the Institute's botanical gardens. Cherry blossoms drifted gently across the stone paths. My phone vibrated. A message from an unfamiliar number. Congratulations on your speech. It reached more people than you know. Take care of yourself. Lena. I read it once, then typed a reply. Thank you. I hope you're doing well too. Nothing more. Nothing less. Some stories didn't require another chapter. Only a respectful final page. I slipped the phone into my pocket and continued walking. The wind carried another wave of blossoms across the path ahead. Years ago, I had watched one airplane disappear into the sky and believed my life had departed with it. I had been wrong. A missed flight had cost me the woman I thought would define my future, but had also revealed something far more valuable. A future should never depend on someone who fears your growth. It should be built by the person willing to keep walking, even after the departure gate is closed. I smiled to myself and stepped forward, leaving the old runway of regret far behind. The end.